My name is Helena. I'm 52 years old. If someone had told me 20 years ago that one day I would pour everything I had, every penny, every hope, into an old corner house, I would have laughed. But life has its ways of testing our limits, of asking us, how far would you go for those you love? After my husband, Roberto, died, the house became too big for me. Big and silent. The laughter of my children, Lucas, Clara, and Raphael, still echoed through the hallways, but they had already spread out into the world, trying to be adults, trying to manage their lives. I thought my role as a mother was over, that my mission was to watch from afar, cheer them on, and offer advice if they asked. But I was wrong. It started slowly, like a leak you only notice once the wall is already blackened. First, Raphael lost his job. Then, Clara separated from her husband, returning home with my 3-year-old granddaughter in her arms, her tears hidden behind tired smiles. Lucas tried to keep everything together, but the bills piled up faster than the paychecks. And the house, our house, started to be threatened. The bank sent the first letter, then another, and another. One night, after yet another dinner where the silence weighed heavier than words, Lucas placed an envelope on the table and said, "Mom, we won't be able to hold on much longer." I looked at the envelope as if it were a ticking time bomb. My heart beat so hard it felt like it would tear through my chest. There it was, the verdict, the house mortgaged, the debt growing, the time running out. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I sat alone in the kitchen. The dim light above the sink cast shadows on the peeling cabinets. I ran my hand across the tabletop, the same table where I had taught the kids to do math, where we had blown out birthday candles, where Roberto used to sketch projects for his carpentry clients. Every inch of that house was a piece of our story. I closed my eyes and knew I couldn't let it end. The next day, I made a decision. I started by selling my jewelry. The engagement ring Roberto had given me during our first spring together, a small diamond he had paid for with months of extra work. The necklace my mother had left me, still carrying her scent trapped in the clasp. Each piece took a bit of me with it, but I told myself, it's just matter. Family is what matters. Then I went to the bank. I withdrew my retirement savings. The manager looked at me with that expression that silently asks, "Are you sure?" But he just stamped the papers. I didn't hesitate. In my mind, the equation was simple. Saving the house was saving us. For weeks, every cent that came in, every embroidery I sold, every extra hour of cleaning work I could get, went straight to paying the debt. I turned the backyard into a small vegetable garden to cut down expenses. I spent sleepless nights calculating bills in old notebooks. And then, one day, the long-awaited letter arrived. Your property is fully paid off. I remember sitting on the porch steps, letter in hand, laughing and crying at the same time, like a woman who had beaten fate itself. I called the kids and Clara for a special dinner. I made each one's favorite dish, lasagna for Lucas, feijoada for Raphael, and that cornbread cake Clara always said smelled like childhood. When I showed them the letter, they hugged me. Raphael cried without shame. Clara squeezed my hand until it hurt. Lucas, always so reserved, let out a soft, "I love you, Mom," that nearly got lost in the whirring of the fan. At that moment, I thought we had won. I thought it was worth it. Every tear, every sacrifice was worth it. We started to rebuild. Mornings smelled like freshly brewed coffee. Afternoons were filled with the noise of children running around. Sundays regained the taste of family, with improvised barbecues in the backyard and domino matches on the terrace. I laughed when Raphael filled the living room with moving boxes, saying it would be just for a few months. I hugged Clara every time she came home crying from the court hearings. I advised Lucas on tough work decisions, even if I didn't really understand much about finance. Sometimes, I would look around and see our shoes piled by the door, toys scattered across the floor, dirty pans in the sink, and feel a peace so deep it almost hurt. The house had come back to life. It would only be much later that I would realize the house was full, but the hearts were empty. But at that time, I didn't see it. Or maybe I refused to see it. I clung to the illusion that the sacrifice was enough to keep us all together, that a shared roof could heal invisible wounds. I ignored the tired glances, the secrets exchanged in the hallways, the increasingly long absences at dinner, the closed doors. I kept telling myself, it's just a phase. Everything will go back to how it was. And every night before falling asleep, I gave thanks for the home, for the chance, for the family. I didn't know that while I dreamed of strong roots, they were already planning their departure. That day started like any other. The sun crept timidly through the cracks in the curtains, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery on the corner filled the kitchen. I was distracted, sorting bills to pay, scribbling some ideas for Sunday lunch in my recipe notebook. Then I heard the noise. A car engine. A car door slamming. Heavy footsteps in the garden. I went to the window and saw two men in suits talking at the gate. One held a clipboard, the other had a phone pressed to his ear. I found it strange, but didn't think much of it. Lately, it seemed like every kind of salesman came knocking at our door offering insurance, loans, services. I went back inside. That's when I saw the sign. A huge sign, planted in the front lawn like a nail in a coffin. For sale. Contact Santos, Sun Realty. My heart skipped a beat. I felt my blood run cold, a wave of vertigo pulling me to the ground. For a few seconds, everything around me blurred, as if the world had slipped far away from me. I ran outside, stumbling over the doorstep. "Excuse me," I shouted to the men. They looked at each other, surprised. "Mrs. Helena?" asked the one with the clipboard. "We're here to show the house." "Show the house?" My voice came out high-pitched, almost a whisper. "Show what?" He checked his papers. "It's scheduled. Open house for buyers. Paperwork already in progress." I felt my legs give out. I leaned against the gate, trying to understand, trying to fit those words into some logic that made sense. But there was no logic. Only pain. A brutal, absurd pain that started in my chest and spread like wildfire. I stumbled back inside, looking for the kids. I found no one. The house felt empty, cold, suddenly much smaller than I remembered. I called Raphael. It rang until it cut off. Then Clara. Voicemail. Finally, Lucas. He answered on the third call. "Mom," he said in a low voice. "We were going to tell you today." "Tell me what, Lucas?" "That you sold our house?" There was a silence, so heavy it could be touched. "Mom, listen. It was the best decision for everyone. You don't understand. This house is a burden. Too big. Too expensive to maintain. We couldn't keep going." I tried to speak, but the words died in my throat. "We wanted to spare you, Mom," he continued. "You don't deserve to be killing yourself here, all alone." "Alone?" My voice exploded before I could control it. "I did all this for us. Every cent, every choice, it was all for you." "We know," said Lucas, his voice thick with guilt. "And we're grateful. But life moves on, Mom. Everyone needs to find their own way." I remember hanging up without saying goodbye. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the half-open closet, where dresses I never wore still hung, saved for parties that never happened. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. Not then. The shock was so great that tears felt too small to carry such pain. The next day, the visits began. Young couples, chatty realtors, children running across the yard I had planted myself. They walked through my hallways, touched my walls, inspected my kitchen like they were examining a carcass. I sat hunched on the porch, invisible. A pregnant woman smiled at me once. "It's a beautiful house," she said. "Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful like the Christmases we spent there. Beautiful like the nights I rocked my children to sleep in the living room. Beautiful like the love notes Roberto used to leave on the bathroom mirror." But now, to them, it was just a property. A commodity to be bought and sold. I called the three of them for a talk. I asked them to come at night, no excuses. When they arrived, they sat like strangers on the sofa. Lucas fiddled with his phone. Raphael avoided my gaze. Clara stared at the floor. I took a deep breath.
"Why?"
Raphael was the first to speak. "Mom, you deserve to rest. We didn't want you to carry this burden forever." "And you decided for me?" I asked, my voice trembling. Clara, her eyes brimming with tears, said, "It's not fair for you to be stuck here. We thought it would be better to sell now, split the money, and each of us start fresh." Each word was a knife. Split. Money. Start fresh. You think money can replace what we had? I whispered. You think selling these walls erases the life we lived here? No one answered. The silence was deafening. Finally, I stood up. The words were too heavy in my mouth, but I needed to say them. You didn't sell a house, I said. You sold our story. You sold what was left of me. One by one, they left, without looking back. I spent that night wandering from room to room. I touched every wall, every piece of furniture, as if I could absorb into myself what I was about to lose. I opened Roberto's wardrobe and put on his old sweater. His scent still clung to the worn fibers. I sat on the living room floor, staring at the pencil marks on the wall, the ones measuring the kids' heights, year after year. I thought about tearing that piece of wall out, taking it with me as a relic. But I gave up. The pain of destroying it was even greater than the pain of losing it. For the first time in months, I cried. I cried like a child without a home, without ground, without shelter. I cried until I fell asleep on the carpet, cradled by the memory of a family that no longer existed. At the end of that week, I signed the papers for the sale. I signed with steady hands and dry eyes. Not because it didn't hurt, but because sometimes the pain runs so deep that not even tears can reach it. I handed the keys to the realtor. No celebration, no hugs. I left behind not just walls, but an entire lifetime. I walked away with a small suitcase. A suitcase that weighed less than the emptiness inside me.